My best to make sure that you get the maximum amount of information, and not just any information that you can utilize within your organization in a very practical way to really get you the results that you are looking for. I have the team as well monitoring the chat room, so any questions that you might have along the way, please make sure that you drop them into the chat box. If you would like everyone to be able to see that, you can choose the option for everyone to view it, or you can send it directly to myself as well, and I'll be able to spot it on my screen. Now, today I'll be talking about employee engagement in the new era. Many words have been used: new normal. Some people can't wait for things to go back to some amount of normal. However, I think one of the biggest shifts that has taken place is the use of technology. And technology has been used to connect us better, but it has also created some barriers on its own. Now, my name is Vishnu Durga. I am the CEO of Action Invest. And at Action Invest, we always look at delivering products to Ghana and across the Caribbean, because we do work with quite a number of companies, organizations across the Caribbean, to really work on the people and the organizational development side. Now, two of the products that we have that are closely related are Action Coach, where we work with medium to large businesses to really work on the systems side of the organization. And we have now also brought in Engage and Grow, which is to really work on the people side of the business. And you will very shortly understand that it is more about the hard side of the business. I am very passionate about this particular field. My studies, I am a doctor in strategic management. I do specialize in entrepreneurship, but it is really my passion to help people unlock the potential that they have within, because every single portion that I can help unlock that potential, it has a knock-on effect. It has a chain effect, because that portion can then help another portion. Maybe they help three, maybe they help 10, maybe they help 100 people. So I believe that this is my mission in my life, to really unlock the potential of as many people as possible. I have learned a lot of these tools in the past 15 years of my life, and it has really made my life so much better. And that is what I really want to have for everyone that I come in contact with. Now, one of the key things that we're looking at is how can we really unlock and engage the team so that they can energize your business, your organization. Just make sure 2020 has really hit us like almost like a tidal wave. At the end of 2019, I think all of us really had all our plans set out for what we wanted to achieve in 2020. 2020 was actually called the year of clarity, the year of clear vision. If you see the relationship between 2020 vision, and then very quickly, 2020 turned into a year that was very unexpected. First of all, with the COVID crisis that we're still facing, and that is causing, when we say, it's causing physical distancing, we use the word social distancing a lot. And I really wouldn't want people to be socially distant. We are social creatures, so the human connection is very important to all of us. But what we do need to make sure from a health perspective is that there is a physical distance between us as human beings until we develop a treatment, a vaccine, or we figure out how to best deal with COVID-19. So that hit us. It has hit not just us in Guyana, but across the world. This is probably the first time in 100 years, unless you also count the world wars, that an incident, and in this case, not just an epidemic, but a pandemic, affects the entire world almost equally. And in Guyana, of course, it has been exacerbated by our ongoing elections. I think we now actually hold the record for the longest unresolved elections. So one more to chalk up next to Guyana. I'm sure that all of us would want that level of normalcy to return. But let's think about the mental pressure and the mental stress that it's causing many people in organizations, out of organizations. You have families right now that are also worried about, the future, especially if the main breadwinners are not able to do so, or if they're under significant stress, that also plays out in the family. So 2020 really hit us like a tidal wave. My goal for you in this particular session is really to give you some ideas about what the new world of work might look like, um, how to actually manage, and that should say manage, not manager, the younger generation, because we have many millennials have already entered the workforce, but now Generation Z is also entering the workforce. How to get a lot more engagement, especially if you're working virtually with your team. Um, we do have a high performance model that really unlocks a lot of the energy within people. I want to make sure that you get introduced to that. The 6 steps to employee engagement. So the key thing to remember here today is that with the knowledge that I'm sharing with you, I would like you to start using as much as you can within your organization, within your business, even within your family. For some of you, there will be need for professional support, professional assistance, and you will reach out to us and we will help you with that. But the goal is to ensure that you get the most out of this session here today. Now, I can notice that someone is saying they're not hearing anything. Please make sure that if you're using a mobile device to listen in today, that you click on the audio session. So I'm going to ask the team, please take a look at persons who need help. You need to enable your audio. I'm also going to show you some case studies from across the Caribbean. Engage and Grow has now been in the Caribbean for several years, in Trinidad and in Jamaica, and in the Dutch Caribbean. So we want to make sure that we get some Caribbean case studies as well. And then, how do we get you to be an influencer in the new world, in the new organization that is going to be developing? How do we get you to really step up your game as well? So make sure that you have a notepad, pen. Some of you are making your notes on your computers, on your devices. Have it ready, because this will be fairly high-paced. I want to make sure that you get enough breadth of information that you can pick and choose what you want to utilize immediately. So it's going to be significant. And I would strongly encourage you, if you're doing other things, we've heard about the word multitasking. Research has shown that there's no such thing as multitasking. It's switch tasking. So you put a little bit of attention here, and then you switch to the next thing, and then you switch back. So I'm going to ask you, avoid multitasking. Put your attention here. I need your attention for about 90 minutes. And I would strongly encourage you, put your attention here, turn off everything else that you could possibly turn off. If you have any colleagues in the office that, might need your support, maybe you can call them in to join you so that they can learn something that they can apply as well during these 90 minutes. Because, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And I want you to really get the maximum impact from today's session. So at the end of this session, I will have not just one gift, but I'll have 2 gifts for you, for those of you who would want to really take the bull by the horns and make significant changes within your organization. And I would say not changes, significant improvements, because change is not always good. The webinar is ideally suited to managers, owners, particularly well, the chief executives in the organization, anything in HR, and if you are a coach or a consultant, this webinar will also be very, very useful to you. Now, as I mentioned earlier, most people try to improve organizations by looking at the brain side of the business. They want to continue focusing on making sure all the processes are in place, the systems are in place, governance is in order, that they have fantastic products, everything is laid out well. But that is very task oriented, if you notice. It's all about the doing that needs to happen, and it almost makes us treat our team members like human doings. Human doings. That's what our brain ends up doing, right? Think about your brain. Your brain keeps telling you all the things that to be need to be done. Now, what we need to look at is that there's also the hard side of an organization, the hard side of a human being, your own heart. And your own heart is very concerned, very interested in the behavior. That's where the behavior comes from. The relationships between people, communication, leadership, and culture all come from a more feelings oriented, a more heart side of the organization. And unfortunately, um, there's not that much attention paid to the heart side of the organization. And as I mentioned earlier, Action Coach is fantastic on the mind and body side of things, on the business education side of things. And we have noticed, Action Coach is now 5 years, 5.5 years now in Guyana. We've really noticed that we're able to ramp up companies significantly on the brain side of things. But we were noticing, and COVID just blew it completely out of the water, made us realize how disconnected people can become as well. If we only focus on the things that need to be done and forget that we're not dealing with human doings, we're dealing with human beings. And human beings have a heart, human beings have a spirit. So we really needed to have an employee activation system, a people activation system. And that's where Engage and Grow comes in. So I did see a question, is there a recording? What we will do is to make sure that the attendees today will also receive a copy of today's presentation so that you can review it as well. Engage and Grow started with an athlete, Mr. Richard Maloney, located in Brisbane, Australia. And he started off as an athlete and was part of many, many winning sports teams. When he retired, many organizations started to reach out to him, and he retired, became a coach, helped a lot of sports teams win many, many championships. And then organizations started to reach out to him to say, well, can you help us have our people actually operate like a winning team? And he then utilized all the research that came from helping sports teams really dominate in their fields to bringing it to the business industry. He's also the author of 3 books. The one is released most recently, but The Minds of Winning Teams and Injury-Free Mental Training for Elite Athletes. And think about it, I'm a business athlete, right? And again, if I understand that I'm a business athlete and you may be a health athlete, you might be in the beverage industry, whatever industry you're in, shouldn't you be an athlete in your field and not just a player? So the last one that he actually wrote is How to Thrive Under Pressure, and it's stress-free, but how to thrive under pressure in unprecedented times. So this is his latest book that is out. And it's really seated on an organizational success model. When people enter the organization, they enter basically like sheep, right? They're looking at how can they fit in, right? How do they just fit into the organization? They then move into being more of a me person, right? And a me person is one who basically looks after themselves. And what we really want in our organization is we type of people, where portions in the organization are really looking at how do they take care of others in the organization, because that's when the energy, that's when the engagement really gets unlocked in an organization. So in your organization, it would be good to kind of think about who are the people I have in my organization. How many of them are just looking to fit in? How many of them are just looking after themselves? And then how many of them are actually looking out for others and looking out for the organization as well? And once you start segmenting people in that way, you can kind of see where the organization is going and where some of the weaknesses might be. Now, what Deloitte has found in their study in 2016 is that company training is actually the least desirable way to learn. Because traditionally what we do with training, we've been a little bit guilty of that as well, although our model is to work with organizations in the long term, so never ending. Many of the companies we've started with 5 years ago, we still work with them on an ongoing basis. But traditional training basically takes a participant from their fishbowl, right? And it could be a dirty fishbowl, because sometimes we think we'll prescribe training for someone who's not performing well or in the department where things aren't going very well. And we take that portion and we put them in a nice, clean training environment. And in that environment, this portion is now seeing how everything could be done much better and very enthusiastic. And I'm sure that most of you who have been to a training before might have experienced that you go to a training, you're so enthusiastic to get back to work on Monday. And as soon as you get back to work on Monday and you're back into the dirty fishbowl, it's like the shock of your life. How is how come none of the things that I learned in training make sense anymore, that now that I'm back in the organization? And the fewer people who actually attend the training, the less likely it is that they may actually make that massive change that the organization would like to have. So what we really want to be able to do in the engage and grow in employee engagement type of activities is work with the fish, work with the participants in their place of employment, right? And I'll speak to you how that can practically work, so that we can have them clean their fishbowl, clean their department, make sure that the organization functions well because they have support in the organization, so that they themselves can actually clean the fishbowl and then grow the fishbowl. What can the organization actually achieve? So that is the methodology that we use for employee engagement. It cannot be done, on a retreat, far away from the organization. It can be done once a year in order to have a lasting effect. It takes time to get the results that are needed. So we're definitely not any of the things that you see on the screen, not online training, not another workshop, because those methods have been proven now to be old and slow, right? And yes, training, there will always be a place for training. But when we look at training, we basically look at the parameter of skill. When we look at employee engagement, we look at the parameter of will, right? Because you can have people who just need to up-level their skill level, but it's sometimes the willingness to do what is necessary. That is where employee engagement falls. And you can't train people to be more willing. You need to engage them to figure out what's most important to them, have them develop those human connections that make them want to be more committed to themselves, others in the organization, and the organization itself as well. At Engage and Grow, the why, the mission of the organization is to create a globally engaged workforce. The organization has been there now since the early 2000s, but formally it has been rolling out for the past 6 years now. And you can notice that Guyana is one of the last pins there that is on the map. But the program itself, you can always Google it, just check Engage and Grow. You'll see the massive results that we're getting all across the world. You can actually see Richard here. So there's a lot of engagement between the provider of the training and us as coaches to make sure that we always have cutting edge knowledge, find out what's going on, and I'll be teaching you about the group activation system. Now, when I talk to persons internationally and also locally, they believe that things have changed forever. Who could have imagined in January that we would have been so engrossed and so involved with so many webinars? Some of my technology friends here in Guyana tell me that what has happened in the past 3 months, 3 to 4 months, has actually caused an accelerated adoption of technology that they estimate is anywhere between 3 to 10 years. So what they're telling me is that without COVID, it would have probably taken 3 to 10 years for so many people to adopt technology as has happened now. So that must bring some changes to the organization. Now, it's so easy to connect electronically, and this is where we kind of miss that in-person interaction. But is it as easy to connect emotionally? Is it as easy to connect emotionally? And that is where one of the key things comes comes in, because many of your organizations might have people working remotely. And how are we understanding if their mental health is where it needs to be, if they are under unnecessary stress? How do we help them with that? So what we do need to do is actually overhaul and celebrate new leadership. Who are the leaders that will be able to thrive in this new environment? We've noticed as well that the fat is being trimmed. Where we used to spend a lot of money in the past, because we don't have the revenues coming in, the budget support might not be there like it was before. A lot of the fat is being trimmed at the moment. It is now very much, global centralization. It's not uncommon for us to be on a call now with half of the people from far parts of the world, like Australia, India, the UK, and all kind of different time zones. And even for organizations, it is so much easier now for persons to be able to sell your product, serve your customers in a different country. We are noticing that we are coming to grips a little bit now with COVID. We understand it just a slight bit better than 4 months ago. And we've also noticed that with the amount of people who might be either working remotely or laid off, because quite a few people have been laid off as well, they're really looking for a different purpose. What is their purpose? And they really want to be doing something that is aligned with where they want to go in their lives. So we do believe that, the heart will really rule, because people have had some time to listen to more on the inside, in their heart, what do they really want to do with their lives? Now, I'm going to ask you to help me out here. In the chat box, we can see the layout of a new kind of workplace. Can you let me know what's different, or what do you see in this picture here? What comes to mind? What's the first thing that catches your eye in this particular image here? Right, so it's a bit closer. What else can you see in this particular workplace? So type into the chat box what you can see. So I bring it a bit closer. It's an open space. It's it is open space. No human resources there in place. Exactly. Seeing some of you messaging me directly as well. The contemporary design, yes. I'm seeing some of you sending here that the plants look really nice. No privacy, separation. Exactly. Office space plan is very modern. Oh, some of you are actually looking at the view. That's very nice. Looks modern. It's good. So the key takeaway from this particular image here is, if you look on the floor, you'll see those big black circles. Some of the companies in Ghana are also already starting to import that, because one of the key things is, how do we maintain physical distance now between people? And it is recommended to have a minimum of 6 feet. And you can see the black circles on the floor there actually indicate what people's personal space will really be like moving into the future. And of course, things like plants and all of that, and having good airflow within the organization are very important. But people will be taking the point of personal space much more seriously now. Right? There are actually beepers being sold as well, where employees can have a beeper on them, and if they come too close to each other, it starts ringing as well. So all of those things are taking place. You can see on the image on the right, glass barriers as well between offices. Right? So there are some business opportunities as well in the way in which the new world of work will start operating. Some of you in your organizations, you also have hands-free sanitizer dispensers, which is now going to be somewhat of the new normal. And you never know, this for some of the companies that will continue having their people work from home, they might even do branded pajamas, right? Because some people, from the time they get up, they go straight into work, and the companies might actually want their brand to be out there. So that might be an idea for the businesses that are looking at what needs to happen there. Now, things are going even faster now. Online working is a reality. For those of you who are joining me here on Zoom, for you, it is now the norm to be able to attend a webinar attend the workshop online. So employee connection is now critical. How do we make sure that our people are really coming to grips with this world of work? Is their environment conducive? Some companies are actually making sure that at the homes of their employees, they have the right technology in order to be able to function well. New time management structures. Some people might actually be able to get their work done before, some people might work after. It really blurs the line between what is your the 8 to 5, right? It blurs that line. It blurs your lunch period. And how do we then manage the health of the mind and the health of the team? Because those are some of the key things that really come up. Now, in the Gallup study, and I'll show you a little bit on the Gallup study that was recently concluded, 90% of the young workforce is really having difficulties working remotely because in many cases, they still need significant guidance from their supervisors, from their managers. 75% of the workforce feels less connected, right? Because they're not seeing people around them, and especially people who are leaning a little bit more to extroversion. But some of the introverts, this is like a dream come true. They actually don't have to interact with people, but more than 50% of the world is more extroverted. So not having that connection can also really play on them. 66% actually say that they're less informed on what's actually going on with the company. So is the organization communicating on a regular basis? And 56% find it hard to get status update, but also hard to give status updates in this new way of work. It's not as easy now for your supervisor to come and take a peep in your office and say, okay, what's going on? Or for you to ask someone that things aren't going the way you planned and that you really need some support. So mental well-being is one of the highest issues of importance, but people still don't talk about it, right? A lot of us still just carry on as if nothing has changed when a lot has, right? And the studies continue to show that. Right? So to be effective, people need to stay deeply connected to their work and the work of their teams. Right? To really remember, if you're not connected, it's very hard to be effective because how do you know if what you are doing really impacts the organization in the right way, in the way that the organization would like to be impacted. So here we have an image of a volunteer, someone volunteering to be very disengaged. So what do you think some of the results will be when an employee is disengaged? If you can please type into the chat box, what do you think happens when an employee is very disengaged? What are some effects on the employee, on the team, and on the organization? So please type in. What will be the effects if you have disengaged employees in your organization? Right? Demoralization, yeah. It affects productivity. Productivity really goes down. Really affects productivity. That's a big one. I see a lot of things coming around productivity. What else happens? No focus. How does someone who is disengaged affect their team members? Maybe the ones who are not disengaged as yet. Lack of customer service. Imagine if a customer were to walk in at this point in time, and this is one of your frontline portions. Definitely lack of harmony. Right? Lack of harmony, fantastic. So we kind of understand the pain that a disengaged employee can bring to the table. And they negatively impact the team's progress as well. Colleagues, this is a very important one here. Colleagues actually are pressured to start filling the gaps. That's very disempowering to the entire team. Now, the statistics say that the research says that organizations like that are less profitable. You have more health and safety issues because people are not paying attention to how things should be done. More theft as well. Right? Disengagement can cause not just the disengaged person to be engaged in activities that are not healthy to the organization, but also other people looking on. high staff turnover, because the organization might actually have to let go of that portion, and then you have to fill it again, and then you go through that cycle continuously. And less free time as well. Everybody else has to kind of pitch in to make the organization remain afloat. Now, what do you think happens when you have a highly engaged employee? And thank you very much to Keon for volunteering to show us what the highly engaged person looks like. But if I were to go to that, you know, companies with an engaged workforce actually have at least 10% higher customer metrics. So if you're measuring client satisfaction, that usually goes up. They have 17% higher productivity. Profit is increased, exactly. You exceed your targets consistently, exactly. For a sales organization, and some of you might be in not-for-profits, but not-for-profits, it's how many people were you able to serve. But that is expected to be at least 20% higher. And overall, organizations with engaged workforces have 23% higher profitability in the first year of really making that happen. Right? And I like the good work relations, all of that happens in the organization. But what also happens to the people is that the people are actually happier and healthier. And isn't that important for all of us as employees of organizations? That, you know, that's what we strive for, to be happy and happier and healthier. So my question to you now is, what makes people the happiest? Right? Even our national pledge, right, says that we dedicate our energy towards the happiness and prosperity of Guyana. Right? So if we're going to dedicate all our energies towards happiness, I want to ask you right now, what makes people the happiest? Right? So I'm seeing more rewards and motivation being valued, of course, yes. Good work relations. What makes people the happiest? Feeling valued. Staff recognition, achieving the mission. And when I was looking at that study as well, quite a lot of these came up. But I believe, you know, the person who answered first, hygiene factors, feeling engaged. People are happy at work when they can work independently, when they have recognition, they're motivated, being in a fair atmosphere. Very good. So let me see if this surprises you at all. And this is actually one of our last planning meetings. But people are happiest, and this is what the research has shown. People are happiest when they have multiple and meaningful relationships. So if you see at the bottom there, multiple and meaningful relationships. And I want you to just for a second think about your own life. Think about what makes you happy. And I'm sure you might be thinking about your kids, your parents, your spouse, your colleagues at work who you can really connect with. And, you know, sometimes the easiest test is, when are you actually laughing? Right? When are you actually having fun? And you'll notice that it's generally because of a meaningful relationship with someone else. Right? And in organizations as well, to have that level of engagement, we need multiple of those relationships. Think about it. If I'm working in an organization and I have like 10 really good colleagues, really good friends, we've built up such good relationships, and somebody offers me 10% more money to go work elsewhere, I'll have to think 2, 3, 4 times before I even consider that offer. But if I'm the type of person who maybe has just one good relationship in the organization, and somebody offers me 10% more, I might be very likely to, you know, switch over and just move based on the money. So that's why it's very important to have those meaningful relationships within the organization. Now, when it comes to the global statistics across the world, just 15% of the working population is actually actively engaged. And you can see the statistics here as well. So for the world, it's 15, but overall, actively disengaged people is actually 18% of the world's population. And I am pushing right now with the numbers that we have in the Caribbean for us to actually have specific Caribbean statistics But I must tell you that for the nearly 20-something surveys that we've done in the past 2 months in Guyana, our number of actively disengaged is more around the 40 to 45%, which was really shocking to me. Really, really shocking to me. Because when I look at the rest of the world, it's in the 20s, it gets close to 20%. So I'm just thinking it's also good for us, because if we were to actually help with that, imagine how much we could help these organizations evolve and grow. Another statistic here is, this is very recent. This one was from the Gallup panel just in June. You can see that the difference between green and black is May and June. So people are actually seeing less communication from their employers in June. They feel less prepared. They don't feel like their immediate supervisor is really keeping them informed of what's going on. And a lot of people don't feel like their organization actually cares for their overall well-being. They're actually running this. They've been running this every month since March. So I'm going to be very interested to see in July if the numbers continue to decline, or if organizations around the world have actually been able to arrest these numbers. So let's quickly look at some definitions. Highly disengaged. So a highly disengaged employee is an employee that does less than is expected. So I'm going to ask you, and if you are looking at this on a phone or on a computer, feel free to take a snapshot as well of any of the slides that you see, so that you can utilize them, so you can kind of figure out in your organization what's going on. And we have a very interesting worksheet that I'll take you through just now as well. But that is a highly disengaged employee. They do less than is expected. Then we have a disengaged employee, which just does what is expected. They do almost exactly what is expected. In the HR world, we say they work to rule. They work to rule. They do exactly what the rules call for, nothing more, nothing less. And then we have a highly engaged employee. And these are the employees that do more than is expected. And of course, logically, we already know that we would want more highly engaged people in our organization, because that's when the organization really delivers fantastic results. And what we want to do is move the highly disengaged employees up to just being disengaged, just delivering what is needed, and then getting them up to a point where they're highly engaged. And I'm going to take you through the process of how you can start doing this in your organization. According to Gallup as well, we just saw the statistics, but what it really feels like is that if your organization had 10 people, right? If your organization had 10, 11 people, it means that about 1.5, maybe 2 portions are actually rowing that boat and moving your organization forward. It means that about 7 people are actually just looking at the scenery, and if you ask them to help, they'll help, or they'll do what is necessary. But the worst thing is that you have about 2 or 3 people out of the 10 or 11 that you have in your organization dropping the anchor at the back of the boat. So all the progress that you're making in the front of the boat, they're canceling it out to the back of the boat, and they can actually be very demoralizing to the rest of the team as well. So I've always found that this is a very easy way to explain what happens in an organization. And I'm thinking, if you take a minute to reflect on your organization, you actually know who's rowing the boat in your organization in the direction that you want it to go. I'm almost sure that you actually know who the people are who are dropping the anchor in your boat, causing the organization not to move in the way that you want it. It's a bit more difficult to figure out who the middle people are. But the extremes are pretty easy to figure out who they are. And as I mentioned as well, some of the negativities of having disengaged employees, less free time for everyone is not something that you really want to get involved in. But Gallup says that with disengaged employees, so the reds and the yellows, 34% of their salaries are wasted. 34% of their salaries are actually wasted. And very interestingly, and I'm going to ask my team here, Keon, please give me that reminder. Dr. Raul Lucas had actually done a study over 14 years, starting 2000 to 2013 in Guyana, where he demonstrated that for every single dollar that is invested in the public sector, we actually only get 66 cents of productivity back. So from every dollar, we're only getting 66 cents. And I was amazed by how accurately it matches what Gallup came up with globally. Right? So I do want in my next presentation, I actually want to have the Guyanese statistics because that was a 14-year study that came to that particular conclusion. Now, as I already mentioned, much higher profitability with an engaged workforce. So I'm going to ask you to take a snapshot of this particular worksheet here. Yes, I see here, yes, someone actually heard Dr. Lucas say that in the class at UG. It's a fantastic study. I really need to put it in a nice graphical form so that people can understand how impactful this really is. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at an organization with a headcount of about 50. Right? We know that globally, the number of actively disengaged employees is about 18% of the workforce. So if your organization had a headcount of 50, we could actually assume right now, hopefully your disengaged isn't higher than 18%, that you have about 9 employees that are highly disengaged. If we say that you pay one of these employees about $150,000 per month, that means that their annual salary is $1.8 million. So please type in yes if you get me with the calculations, because it doesn't make sense we do something about the problem if we don't know what the problem is costing us. Right? So make sure that you get me with the calculation. So a salary of $150,000 per month is equal to $1.8 million per year. Right? So I'm going to start back from the beginning, where the headcount is your total number of employees. We take your total number of employees, in this case 50, and we multiply it by the global statistic for highly disengaged employees, which is 18%. We're going to assume that your organization has 18% of your employees highly disengaged. That gives us 9 employees. Annually, an employee on average maybe gets 1.8 million, and we just worked out, according to Gallup and according to our own Dr. Lucas here in Guyana, that the cost of a disengaged employee, every dollar that we put on a disengaged employee only gets us 66 cents. It's 34%. So this means that when we pay one person 1.8 million for the year, it actually costs us, we lose $612,000. So now if we take our number of highly disengaged employees and we multiply it by how much it costs us to have a disengaged employee, we realize that for an organization like that, it's actually costing that organization 5.5 million per year. 5.5 million per year. And this is not, we're doing more than is expected. This is just money down the drain. I think I did one more case study here. If you have a smaller organization, maybe you have 30 employees. That means about 5.5 of them are highly disengaged. Don't ask me how we get the half employee. Maybe we're paying them the same amount of money. It actually works out that if you have an organization of just about 30 employees, that your cost is around 3.3 million per year. 3.3 million per year. And then a client actually asked me, they pay much more. So I took the same 50 employees, but this particular client pays their people about 300,000 per month. Right? So 300,000 per month is about 3.6 million per year. Right? So they would actually lose 1.2 million on a disengaged employee. So if you are paying people at 300,000, and above, on the same 50-person organization, your loss is actually around 11 million. And we have to hope that your level of disengagement isn't higher than 18%. If it's higher than 18%, or if you pay people more than 300,000 per month, the cost to your organization or the loss to your organization can be in excess of 11 million. So this is something that I'll offer to you at the end as a gift for us to actually work out for your organization what it is. Because if it's minimal and then it might not make sense doing something about it. But if you may be losing a lot of the money that you're paying as salaries, then it definitely makes sense to do something about this. We have a case here from Spain, and you can basically see when we do the pre-survey, when we survey your employees in the beginning, the green are the engaged employees, yellow is disengaged, and red is actively disengaged. And over a 12-week period, the goal is to get everyone to be highly engaged. And with the survey as well, you'll actually see what your employee net promoter score is. And a employee net promoter score basically means, are your employees going to easily recommend your organization as a place that people should work at? Right? That is a net promoter score. It's the same thing like for companies, right? And I don't know if your organizations have ever taken part in a net promoter score exercise, but the net promoter score is basically people score you on a scale from 1 to 10. And the theory says that only people who score you at a 9 or a 10 will be actively promoting you. 5, 6, 7, 8 don't mean anything. Those people are not actively promoting you. Only a 9 or a 10. And the same thing goes for your employees. Would your employees be the type of persons who would be actively promoting your organization? So we have a testimonial from the Caribbean. Let's hope it wasn't working too well in testing. If not, what I'll do quickly here is I'll play this one. You'll let me know if you can hear the video.
The heart of a company are the people. And the only way you get to grow a company is through knowing the people that you're working with and what makes them tick, what makes them excited, how do you get them engaged.
We found the Engage and Grow program to be an extremely useful platform for troubleshooting organizational dynamics, the behaviors within the organization that inhibit growth and alignment. It was a very successful program for our team in that it helped us break down a lot of the silos and barriers between the various departments to help us to collaborate and troubleshoot some of the challenges within the organization, as well as to help us align ourselves towards one common corporate goal.
We have a team that is now fully engaged, and quite frankly, my challenge is how do I keep them going? How do I keep the momentum going?
What I saw it do in 12 weeks, we have not been able to do for probably about 5 or 6 years. It allowed us to take 12 different personalities at a table and align them all towards a common goal of growing the company. It allowed us to invite those persons who were coming up as successors for our roles and introduce them to a new way of thinking.
These past 12 weeks with our fantastic coach, Marcel Wunchoy, have been a real eye-opener for me. If I was to sum up the program in one word, I would say it has taught me to care. It has given me insight into my colleagues, made me think about my approach to work, my approach to interaction.
How you interact with your family, how you interact with your friends, it really plays an important role in your life.
We have learned so much about not only the various departments of the company, but also from our individual co-workers. And it has helped us to appreciate the process and each other.
I would heartily recommend the Engage and Grow program as a necessary ingredient in any organization wishing to improve its organizational effectiveness and efficiency.
You don't need to be too big. You don't need to be too small to start something like Engage and Grow.
We are now far more confident that this team will deliver.
We have an example that's actually from Jamaica. So the action coach in Jamaica is Ms. Marcia Wunchoy. So if any of your organizations, any of the organizations on the call have subsidiaries or friends in other organizations in Jamaica, That was CAC 2000, is a large industrial company, actually an award-winning company as well. So, you know, the results that they've had were really fantastic. So let me just make sure. So the way the program actually works is using the science of motivation, and there are 7 neurological motivators. So pain, people are motivated to move away from pain. They're motivated to move towards pleasure, towards reward. Some people can also be motivated by the threat of punishment. Um, some of us who are a little bit more enlightened, a little bit more disciplined, we are motivated by being able to choose our own direction. Some of us are motivated by self-improvement. And some of us are really motivated by what we call transcendent purpose, which is really the question, why um, why am I placed on earth? What is my role here on earth? What am I meant to do? That is transcendent purpose. So those are the 7. Then if you've ever heard Tony Robbins speak, he's very sharp, he's very strong on the core human needs. Humans need love, they need variety, right? So they need love from the people around them. They need variety, right? So they need some amount of change from time to time. They love growth. They want certainty as well, knowing that certain things will be there. And then they want significance and they want to be able to contribute. And then we have coupled that with the understanding of how we as human beings learn the quickest. And this goes back to our caveman, cavewoman days, when the way we had to learn back then was by the storytellers around the fireside at night, right? Where they related the stories, and that's how we got our knowledge back then. And it was through discussion, through experience, through teaching. Right? So the model is really built on making sure that we touch on these human motivators, the human needs, and in a method in which they can learn best and they can learn fastest. Now, there are 2 ways, we can get people to change. One, of course, is hypnosis. And don't worry, I'm not going to hypnotize anyone here today. I don't have a degree in hypnosis as yet. But in another way, it is to really, repetition and reprogramming. And I know some people don't like the words reprogramming, but we have to understand that when we all enter this world as babies, we came as a blank slate. The programs we are running today are the beliefs that came from our parents, our siblings, our teachers, our role models, our peers. And we have adapted a lot of that programming. Some of the programming helps us, but some of the programming also hurts us. For example, if you had a bad experience doing something the first time, your programming now says avoid that because it didn't work. Does that mean that it will never work? Or could it have been that something else was off the first time you tried it? So we do get people to learn through repetition, and that's why the programs that we would recommend are generally between 8 to 16 weeks long, so that people on a weekly basis, they get to practice the new habits, practice them until those habits replace old habits. Right? Because sometimes people tell you to drop a habit. It's much better to replace a bad habit with a good habit. But if you try to drop a bad habit and you leave that vacuum, the law of the vacuum starts coming into play, because it's like when you clean up your garage and you didn't decide what's going to go in those spots, or you cleaned out your dresser and you didn't decide what was going to go in those spots, how quickly it fills back with the same garbage that was there before. So the critical area where we're focusing is really on the hard side of the organization. Deloitte has said that over a period of time, your organization actually becomes 8 times more successful when you actually look at the hard side of the organization. Now, I want you to take a snapshot. If you can quickly take a snapshot of this image. And for those of you who are not fantastic at snapshots, that's why I ask you have your pen and paper. Draw 3 circles, right? 3 large circles, and label them the way they're labeled here on screen. And I'm going to go through 9 of the areas. And again, this is something that I will do with you individually or with your team if you choose to get professional support. Now, I want you to look at each area that I'm going to mention, and you're going to decide for yourself if this is an area that your organization is poor in, if it needs work, or if it's going great. So we're going to start with skill set, right? Because most of the time when we get called to organization, when action coach gets called, it's skill set. We want people to sell more. We want them to be better at research and design. We want them to make the products better. We want organizational roles and job descriptions. So that is skill development, right? So in your organization, is there a program for skills development so that people can not only do their current job better, but they can also be prepared to move up to the next level, right? Because that is all about making sure that you have a succession plan. Because not when someone leaves the organization or someone quits, it's a chaos in the organization. Is the layer below that level, are those people already prepared to be able to step in when necessary? So rate yourself on skills development in your organization, and you don't need to put that in the chat box. You're making your own listing there. And for those of you, if you plan to call me in, please keep these notes so that we can discuss them when we meet. So it's either going to be poor, you need work, or it's going great. Next is feedback. Does your organization have both a structured way of feedback and an open method of feedback? Do people feel safe enough to be able to really express what's on their mind and on their heart without the fear of retribution? Are there some anonymous ways in which your organization is capable of receiving feedback from its members? Right? So you're scoring. You're the scorer here in this particular exercise. You're keeping score. Next is benchmarking. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just explain the areas. When we meet in person, I'll go more in depth in case we really need to go further than my explanation here today. And if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments box. Benchmarking basically means how good are you at comparing your organization with similar organizations either in the country or across the world? What are the benchmarks that they're operating with? Maybe it is number of people seen per day. Maybe it is proposals generated per day. Maybe it is your customer satisfaction rankings. Maybe it's your profitability score. So how good are you at benchmarking yourself against the industry? Because the worst thing you would want is that you think you're doing fine and a competitor steps in and their performance levels are so much better and they erase you really quickly. Right? And unfortunately in Guyana in the next couple of years, quite a bit of that is going to happen. That's why we do need to step up our game here in Guyana. Those are about skill set. And you would notice that when we have skill set and culture, when we have a good skill set and good culture, that's when productivity rules. So let's look at culture. Is there trust and open communication in your organization? Right? Or are there cliques and in groups and out groups? Trust and open communication. Please score your organization on trust and open communication. Is there accountability? Do people know exactly what is expected from them and not subjectively? Subjectively meaning it sounds like most things get done plenty, we'll do a few, we need to do more. All those things are subjective, right? Accountability is really about objectively being able to measure people. So 7 meetings need to be conducted with stakeholders. 2 proposals need to be finalized. Right? So do people know? Are they held accountable? Do they know what their numbers are and are they held accountable? You're keeping score. Is the culture solution focused? Or whenever you hear people, the only thing you hear is them bringing problems to the table. And this problem and that problem and this person is causing this. Or do you hear people in your organization saying, oh, we can do this. Or, I thought about this improvement we could make to our system. So score yourself what happens in your organization. When we have an overlap, when the culture is in place and we have good leadership, that's when you have loyalty to the organization. So from a leadership perspective, is the vision, is the direction and the destination that the organization going into Is it clear? Does everybody in the organization know where this organization is heading? And are the values that the organization has on the wall, and hopefully all your organizations already know the values that the people in the organization lives by, are they evident and are they practiced? Two things, right? We identify them, and are they actually practiced? If they're practiced and they're working, you need to put going great there. If you don't know what the vision is of the organization, you don't know what the values are, then it's poor. If it's evident, yes, they were written down, they're somewhere on the wall or somewhere in a folder or somewhere on top of a shelf, but nobody actually knows them by heart, nobody practices them, then it needs work. Next level is personal development. For the leaders in the organization, because if the leaders don't work on personal development, it's unlikely that team members are working on their personal development. But does the organization and do the leaders actually invest in personal development? Are they constantly getting better? Score that again. And then finally, is there an established recognition method in the organization? Because in some organizations, the only thing that is recognized is poor performance, and it's recognized in the form of a warning letter or a memo. We are looking, instead of catching people doing the wrong thing, catch people do the right thing and recognize them for when they do the right things. If you ever read, you can read the book Whale Done. I'm just going to type that in. Here's a fantastic book at how whales are actually trained. Whale Done. And fantastic book on how to recognize people doing the right thing, so that people put more and more of their energy in doing the right things in an organization. So let's say you had scored yourself, and I neglected to mention, when we have good leadership in an organization and good skill set, people are competent to do what they need to do, then you have an organization that can deliver excellence. Only when all these areas are green, that's when you actually have an engaged workforce, an engaged team. But let's say you were to score it, and this is what your score looks like. Of course, we'll start working on the areas that are reds, right? Because if you don't have those reds and you don't move them into the green, the organization will continue to struggle. And I'm just going to give you some brief examples of how we can go about this. But before I get to that, I did promise that I would have touched on these 6 levels, the 6 steps to employee engagement. The step number 1, we always have to start with evaluating what the current situation is in an organization and start setting the benchmark. Yes, we know where we are, but where do we want to go? Right? So we evaluate what's going on. And what happens is that when we start evaluating, people will now get their input, and it really fosters that level of equality. But we can all indicate where we are and where we need to go. Then we want people to get, really deliver some buy-in or get buy-in into where we want to go, so that you can have collective accountability. Not that we're expecting the leader alone to carry all the load, or that we expect our few of our high performers, but that everyone is collectively accountable to getting to this result. Then we start working on uniting people. Right? How do we generate meaningful connections that deliver unity, right? Think about if you were in a cricket team and only half of the players were actually really into the game, really playing. I'm kind of describing the West Indies, but my apologies. Winning teams, all 11 of the players and the water boys and the coach, it seems like everyone is 100% invested, and those are the winning teams. I hardly ever saw a winning team, a cricket team, or any other team, with half of the people doing what they could do and the other half dropping the balls and giving away their wickets. No team is going to really win like that. So they need to be united. We need to align them so that we get the people who are negative. We want to align them in a positive direction. They need to know where the organization has to go. And then we move on to engagement, because that's where we actually have trust now. And we turn it from just positive, people being positive, to people really moving into being high performance individuals. And then, growth is always about continuous improvement, and that's when you will see the truth of people being able to live their truth, and the organization to be able to deliver on their truth as well. Yeah, I'd actually mentioned that one of the fastest ways to really unlock what's on the minds of people is by asking them one question. And I'm going to ask that you write down this one question. And the question you can ask to your team is, what is the one thing that we could do that would turn us to number one in our field, in our industry, in our sector? You would be amazed by the amount of ideas that would come out from the team when you ask this question. What is the one thing we can do that will put us so far ahead that will make us the number one in our sector, in our industry? And what we have found is that the things that people say, we can put them in two buckets. We can put them in the brain bucket, or we can put them in the heart bucket. And generally, the results are usually they're more in the heart bucket, because most organizations, it's easy to work on the brain side of things. It's logical, right? It's rational. Most organizations have been working on the brain side of things. Most organizations have not been working on the hard side of things. And what we generally find, and you have an example on the screen here, is that most of the suggestions that will come from your team are heart-oriented activities, heart-oriented initiatives that need to take place. And I think this was Deloitte. Companies with a soul, companies that feel good, and those of you who've done your MBAs or any kind of management training, you'll hear about Zappos, and you'll hear about Google, and about these fantastic places to work. I can't wait for us to actually do some rankings in Guyana. I'm hoping that I trust with all that we do, Action Coach is one of the places that people really love to work because of our soul experience. But it really allows for much higher level of engagement and better customer service. And companies with the soul actually had 1,026 return on investment, 10 times the money that was invested in the organization as a return, according to Deloitte. And we do have a glossary of all the research as well for people who want to go deeper into this. Some of you might be wondering, well, Vishnu, how do you get to do this? How do we unlock the heart? And this is something that I'll run with you, again, if you want to step a bit further, but I'm going to tell you about some of the engagement keys, because based on your map, the things that need to be improved in the organization, we will customize a program that will really enhance those specific areas that need to really be improved in your organization. So all the areas where you had red and yellow, these are some of the keys that really allow for that to be addressed. So collective buy-in and accountability is one. Having people have collective behavioral benchmarking. So how do we as a team want to behave? Peer reward and recognition on a daily or weekly basis. Best practices. How do we really get best practices from all over the world, all over other places in the industry into your organization? Shared stories. Sometimes, again, I mentioned to you human doings. Human beings have lives and they have stories. How do you get that they can really share those so you can have better level of understanding? Of course, the easiest one is growth of individual behaviors. In some cases, personalized one-on-one coaching will be needed to help people beyond the mindset that they currently have. Preparing your emerging leaders as well, so that the organization has sufficient members of your organization that can fill up any gaps that come up in leadership. Teaching people how to chair a meeting and how to get the most out of the people who are in the organization. Making sure that people know everyone in the organization. So if you have 50 people in the organization, there might be some people who don't even know each other in an organization like that. There might be some people who don't know your clients. They've never met your clients. They don't know who the final person is who benefits from the service of the organization. Of course, brand awareness and social responsibility could be one of the things that might be missing. And then, how do we get creative thinking and innovation really unlocked in the organization? So these are some of the keys. There are a lot of them, but these are some of the common ones that we have to work with in the organization. For those of you who will be trying to do this on your own, some ideas for hard-based ideas. Do you know things about the people in your organization? Right? Do you know what their favorite food is to eat? If you're really someone's friend and you want to surprise them with something, how will you do that if you don't know anything about the person? Some games as well that could be played to really allow you to understand people better, understand the way they think. Larger organizations might have never done an icebreaker with their people, where you really get to understand more about the person. Some people get hired, they introduce them the first day, and then they get placed in a corner to do their work. They don't know the people that they work with. In terms of tracking it, the way we track it, we would actually, everyone in the team that participates would have a specific leadership act to perform on a weekly basis, a small leadership act. And that is when we can start measuring who's engaged and who's disengaged. And that's when peer pressure really starts to play a role as well, where persons start looking at, well, I care for my team, I will do the acts that I committed to do. And we move from a place where, in the first week, half of the team might be disengaged. And then towards the last week, the middle of the program to the last week, everyone starts becoming really fully engaged. And it's really magnificent to be able to see that. How to recognize your team. So teaching you ways as well in which you can recognize your team. And a simple thing that you can start doing is when you have a meeting or you have an activity, maybe asking persons, okay, and who would we like to recognize during this meeting or for the work that was done in the past week that really stood out to you? Right? Because you would be amazed how far recognition of your people will actually go to really unlock the hard side of things. And what happens is that when we work with about 6 to 12 people in a group, they start impacting people who weren't even part of the program. Right? So because that behavior, that culture spreads in the organization, where people who you haven't given them recognition, they're not part in the group, but when you actually work with someone and you recognize them, it's very easy for them to go to someone else who wasn't part of the meeting, wasn't part of the group, and then give some recognition there as well. Give some advice there as well. And that really helps with getting to a high performance habits within the organization. That's why I also mentioned that it takes some time, right? It can take anywhere between 8 to 16 weeks of people practicing constantly to getting these new habits into place. Another case study here, but I think I do prefer the local case studies. This is one that is, I believe, from Massey Gas Products, and this is in Trinidad. What did they wanted to do? They wanted to improve staff engagement. They wanted their team to operate more collaboratively, and they wanted to increase profit and sales. And you can see how they really improved and became a more cohesive team, a more engaged team. Let me see if I can share this here.
Well, since the program started, this team that I manage was fairly new and didn't know each other. So we still in that storming, norming type of space. And what we've seen since then, since we did the program over the last 3 months, was a significant change in the quality of conversation and a significant change in the relationship developed between the members of the team. The participation level, the trust, and at the end of the day, a real caring showing up in the team. For me personally, it's made my job easy because the collaboration that you now see among the team members means that I have less to do with the day-to-day operational issues that I had to get involved in before. And you're seeing a lot more of that internal collaboration among the teams and a genuine trying to solve problems without me having to get involved. So it's made my job easier. for the way the program is structured, it can only benefit the organization and it can only benefit the people because it's around the people's development, first of all. Second of all, know that it requires participation. So lead by example, right? So if you are deciding to do this, recognize that you have to dedicate of yourself and you have to give of yourself to lead by the example that you are trying to foster in the team. And every success will come after that.
That's from the team at Masi Gas. And they were actually coached by Dr. Indira Couch, who's actually on the call here as well. So if any of you are from Trinidad or you have colleagues in Trinidad or your organization also operates in Trinidad, you can always reach out to Dr. Indira Couch. You can reach out through us so that she can also deliver those fantastic results as she has with the many companies in Trinidad today. She's actually ranked as the #1 Engage and Grow coach in the world, and that is out of 300 plus Engage and Grow coaches around the world. So we usually start with the pre-program survey. Some of the companies on the call have already gone through the pre-program survey. 10 questions takes just about 60 seconds to get completed, and it really gives fantastic insight into what's happening in the organization. And you have many consultants who charge quite a bit of money to do employee engagement surveys, and that's why I wanted to. I have a gift to give you at the end of this particular session that will allow you to get some fantastic benefits. What we also do is towards the middle of the program, we do a mid-program survey to kind of measure what is working, what's not, and what do we need to tweak to make sure that we get the maximum results towards the end of the program. And then what we do is we measure engagement again at the end of the program, where we can really see that in most cases, the entire team is highly engaged and they are now in the process of understanding how they can continue running at a high level of engagement within the organization. There are a lot of programs ranging from dealing with just the leaders. There are programs that are for athletes. So if I see someone mention the CPL earlier, but if you know sports teams that really need to unlock their engagement levels and their energy as well, we have programs for that. There are programs for women only. There are also some maintenance programs that if you want us to help you throughout the year, we also have programs that will allow us to do that. One of the latest programs is called the Achievers Club. This is the shortest program that we have. It's about 8 weeks. It's really like a Kickstarter. If you're really down in the dumps, and you really want, quick startup and then decide what to do after, maybe the Achievers Club would be for you. But again, this is something that we first have to determine what your need is and if we can actually help you get the results that you're looking at. So some more results here. Some details about the program, and I do know that I have Dr. Indira Couch on the call as well. So when we get to the Q&A, she will be able to address some questions as well because she's run many programs in Trinidad. The sessions are generally about 90 minutes per week, anywhere between 60 to 90 minutes per week. They're facilitated by a coach, and they could be individual because we do have individual leadership programs. So if you are a leader and you really want to step up your game, we do have programs where we just work with you alone, but generally it's in a group. It's all action, right? No pen and paper. It is how do you practice the behavior that you would like to have in the organization. It can directly impact, definitely all the employees that participate, but also the ones that they have to do activities with and the clients they have to do activities with. And from a single group, it can indirectly impact several hundred people. The key program, the signature program that we generally want to start with organizations is called the Red Belt program. And that one runs for 12 weeks. So it's 12 sessions over 12 weeks. And the average investment, it could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more, works out to about 6 or 7 US, so about 13,000 Ghana dollars. per portion per session. So that would be the investment to really unlock the energy in the people that you have, that we have. Right. So as I mentioned, what we really need to make sure we work on is managing the mind health of our team, managing the team health. I do want to share with you just the levels of leaders that are out there, and I would strongly encourage you to understand that you are all leaders. But when we start off in organizations, then sometimes we ourselves cause ourselves to be in the role of a disliked manager. And I'm sure you've come across disliked managers before in your career, where people are, people don't want to listen to them. People don't, they want to stay away from them. This is the type of manager that always looks as if they're out hunting for someone. So we don't want to be, and that portion uses very little heart. They have very little empathy or sympathy for anyone else. Then we have the disrespected manager, where people might listen to them a bit, but they don't really pay attention. They don't regard or revere what this type of manager has to say. Then we have the manager that starts connecting with people, does what they personally need to do so they can kind of lead by example. Then we have the managers who start leading because they are getting the results. And it's very easy for someone to listen to a leader, to respect the leader who is getting results. Very tough to do that with leaders who only say or tell people what to do, but they don't do the things that they say. Right? So, but what you really want to start moving towards is, like the accomplished leader, where people really start understanding that this leader has their team at heart. The stress-free leader is the type of leader where, regardless what issue you may be facing, you know that your leader will help you find a way in which that could be addressed. Right? So it reduces the stress on the leader, reduces the stress on the person. And then finally, the pinnacle that we are all striving to be is the intuitive leader. And this is the type of leader who doesn't just handle the day-to-day really well, but also has their eye on the future, on the horizon. What are the shifts that are coming about? COVID is here. How do I best deal with this particular situation so that my team is minimally affected and that they can possibly also do even better than the organization was doing before? For those of you who really want to go deeper into the heart side of leadership, I would encourage you to look for the Institute of Heart Math, where there is so much science being so much research being done right now into the science of what the heart and the motivation and the energy that you can get from that. So for those of you really wanting to delve deeper, please take a look at that. And to be one of these intuitive, authentic leaders, make sure that you engage and inform your managers, check on their health, their safety, check on their work-life balance. Make sure that your people are well informed and prepared. Watch for burnout as well, because sometimes it's very difficult for employees to switch off, right? Because they have the work, it's with them right now, and they might forget to do the things that they need to do for themselves, fortunately. Have one-on-ones. If you can't do it in person, Zoom is a good opportunity. WhatsApp has different options as well. And don't look away from challenges. Don't sweep them under the carpet. Because what is a big problem today was once a very small matter, minor matter that could have been dealt with at that point in time. I want to leave you with some more tips as well. Communicate frequently to the people around you. We are still facing some rapid changes, so be prepared to actually deliver some rapid responses. Give people some empowerment and authority as well, so that they could make decisions at their level as well. Make sure that your expectations are crystal clear. And the way I would usually test that is when I've given someone my expectations, I ask them, just to confirm, can you please repeat to me, or what's your understanding of what I'm expecting, so that there's no ambiguity in what is needed. Listen to your employees, listen to your team members, and provide that level of consistent, meaningful feedback. The worst feedback you could actually do is tap somebody on the shoulder and say, good job. What does that mean? Be specific with the feedback that you're giving. So if someone did a particular report really well, or they did the Excel formatting really well, let them know that that's the, you're complimenting them for that. And you build trust by doing what is right. Talking about what is right is easy. Doing what is right takes more energy, but that is where trust is really built. For those of you who are looking at reopening now, I know that tomorrow, or is it Saturday, the last set of measures expire. We're going to hear, or we're going to read in the Gazette what the new measures will be. Follow the guidelines. I know that we do have some people from the health industry on the call today from PAHO and WHO. I know that they put out really good content of what is safe to do and what the measures are that we need to have in place. Make sure that you don't put any people at risk as well, whilst the organization continues to deliver. And always think about what's on the employee's mind, right? Because the best way to be able to connect with that employee is understanding that they're thinking about their safety, their economic stability. Some of them have mortgages, have other other investments that they probably made that they have put on hold. They might have to deal with childcare. They might have health issues. They can actually face some level of isolation at the moment. They want to know, are they still valued? Is their job that they were doing before COVID still important? So those are some of the things that are actually on your employees' minds right now that you really need to be able to address. And then, some tips on communication. Be flexible on scheduling as well, because we are really working in some difficult times as well. The time when we used to measure 8 to 5, I think, is quickly coming to its end, because what you really should be doing is measure output. Some people could show up before 8 and stay after 5. They still can't figure out what they got done for the day. Isn't it better that we track the output? So if it takes someone half of the time to deliver the output, good for them. The organization got what it really needed to get. And hold your people accountable. Now, as I mentioned, for those of you who really want to understand, first of all, what's happening in my organization. Yes, Vishnu, I like this whole presentation. I'm so happy you took an hour and a half of your time to explain all of this to me. But I think my organization is doing fine. Or, Vishnu, I don't know what's going on in my organization. What we want to offer you is the employee engagement survey. And again, I mentioned, you can call around. There's some agencies right in Guyana that charge anywhere between as low as 50,000, as high as 500,000 to do a proper engagement survey. We will offer you this at no cost to you, right? At no cost to you. And again, it takes just 60 seconds. There are 10 questions that quickly get ranked. There's a space where people can put any other comments, and some of the comments that have been coming out were very interesting. They were very enlightening to the leader of the organization or the HR manager. Because when HR asked it, if I were to go ask my own organization, I'll probably hear fantastic things. But this is an independent third party doing it on your behalf. We're not collecting anybody's name. We're not collecting their email address. So it's anonymous. So people can really express what is on their heart, what's on their mind, so that you can know what you are dealing with. So you'll actually know your employee disengagement and engagement levels. Because at this point in time, we do feel like the world is in our hands, right? The way we evolve right now is really going to determine the type of results we'll get in the long term. I think I have one more before we get to the Q&A. We really do want to make sure that your fishbowl gets much larger, and that you can add more people to the organization and really serve more. I'm sure that with the fantastic organizations on the call, there are a lot of people who can really benefit from what you do. And not just for those of you who want the engagement survey, send me an email. You can see my email on the screen here. We'll arrange one for you. It takes about a day to make sure that we arrange it for you. We will then send you the script, exactly what you need to send out to your staff. You can send it to them by email or WhatsApp or text. You get it to them. We're asking them to get it completed within 24 hours. We can give you an extension of time, but it's one of the key ways to measure disengagement, right? If you are asking your employee to take 1 minute out of 24 hours to fill in this survey and they don't do it, it's almost self-explanatory, right? They might not be engaged. A highly engaged employee will do almost anything to make sure that the organization keeps rolling forward. And as the second gift, I did promise 2 gifts, is that once we have that completed and there is need to figure out which program will suit you best, we will actually do a 90-minute leadership planning session with your organization to map out what the best way forward is. So 2 gifts are what you will be receiving from us today. Now I'm gonna open it up for questions and answers. I know that I'm 1 minute over time. I did promise 90 minutes. We're now at 2:31. So any questions that you have, I'm going to give you the ability now to be able to unmute yourself, or you can always type any questions in the chat box as well. But more importantly, it's a lot of information. What I would really love from you, if you don't have any questions, to let me know what your biggest takeaway is from this particular session. What is a lesson that you learned that you can go apply immediately? And I'm going to ask, so please send any questions, any comments, and then also, right, thank you very much. I'm seeing interesting and timely presentation. Yes, very happy to be able to do this for everyone who